Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a new knife consult for you. This is the Kizer Critical. This comes to us by way of Kizer as a collaboration with Christensen Knife Works. This is a very big, beefy, and aggressive EDC style blade that comes with a big Wharncliffe up front and a very unique handle in the back, and we'll talk about those details. This knife is currently on sale for about $162. I think usually they're about $180. And we're going to get into some details and some of the great things and some of the not so great things going on here. So let's break this knife down and see what we are looking at. I'll break out the ruler right here. Up front there is about 3.5 inches of cutting length. It's about 4 inches, give or take, back to the pivot right there. The overall length is right at about 8 3/4 inches, so a rather large size knife. I think Kevin Cleary is going to like this one. It's about 5-inch handle overall with about 4.5 inches of grip space right there. It is a beefy knife. Despite these big speed holes right here, it's a rather chunky knife weighing in at 6.22 ounces. So it's certainly something to think about if you are considering picking this guy up. It is long and it is heavy. It's also rather large in a lot of the other dimensions here. The handle thickness is right at about 0.5 inches, so that's fairly standard right there. But the blade stock is very, very beefy, and that's coming in at 0.16 more or less. Right there on the blade stock. So a nice chunky, thick, heavy Wharncliffe for you guys that like these heavier tactical knives. I certainly do like heavier knives sometimes, but there's one major issue that we'll get to that keeps me from really liking this knife. So let's break it down anatomically. Up front, there's that 3.5-inch blade of S35 VN done in this very, very straightforward, aggressive Wharncliffe tip. This reminds me very much of the Hinderer style Wharncliffe tip with the forward angulation on that coming out to a very aggressive, almost tactical-like tip. It's all done in a nice stonewash finish. Kizer stonewash is very nice, very, very consistent. There's a nice top swedge and then the main primary bevel right there. The knife did come actually surprisingly very, very sharp. It cuts through paper quite well, but it's not the best at food prep. It's something that I was kind of hoping this knife would do well, given its shape, would be food prep. But it's a little bit too thick, and that flat grind that you see right there only comes up about maybe 60% of the blade, 70% of the blade, and even back here it's even less than that. So not the best food prep knife, but it does do things like open boxes and break them down quite well. There's a little bit of jimping up top. It's not overly aggressive, but you do get a little bit of purchase, and there is a thumb ramp to augment with that. The top of the spine is not crowned in any way, but nothing is sharp about these angles or anything, and everything is nicely done on the blade. Moving back, it runs on Kizer's ball bearing pivot system. This is probably my favorite part about the knife, is how smooth it is, and with that heavy Wharncliffe blade, it just falls right into position. Very unique pivots on this one. They did these interesting multicolored pip collars. I'll bring this up, we'll get it in focus right here. It's a titanium ring around the pivot, and they've done what looks like heat anodizing in multiple different temperatures at different spots. And I'm just going to be honest, I really dislike this. I think that it looks like it's a lot of pinks and purples, and personally I'm not a fan of those colors on my knives. It looks like sprinkles, or I don't really know, but this knife has such an aggressive looking, tactical, angry appearance, and then you put this almost flowery type of titanium anodized ring on it, and it just makes it look cartoonish, in my personal opinion. I just don't really like it. Maybe they're trying to make it look like faux Damascus, but I really just wish that they had left it all blue or something like that. I think that would have been a much cleaner look. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, especially given that the backspacer is just a straight blue with regards to its titanium anodization. I don't really understand it. I will say that the knife is ridiculously smooth. It's very nice. But again, in true Kizer fashion, and I'm going to bring out a few other Kizers just so we can look at them all here. they have used that ridiculous pivot screw that everyone tells them to stop using. It's on every single one of their knives. This is the Mjolnir, this is the Feist, and this is the Intrepid? No, this is the Gemini right here. All with that same flowery pivot screw. This one happens to be blue anodized, but it's across their whole line, and I'm just tired of seeing it. It just looks terrible on most knives, and again, it detracts from this knife. It's a fancy-looking pivot, it's a flowery-looking pivot, and it just, in combination with that pivot collar, it takes away from this knife, in my personal opinion. I just really don't enjoy that, and I wish to the God that they would find a new screw to start using there. It's not that hard, guys. Just get a new screw. Just don't mill those things. Leave it a plain screw. All right, rant over. Anyways, it is a flipper deployment. It's quite comfortable to flip it. The flipper tab is here. It's a bit of an unusual geometry. Usually, the best geometry for a flipper is to be right perpendicular to the pivot, and perhaps it's pretty close to that, but it's a little bit low. But there's no difficulty in deploying this. The detent is quite nice. I can get about 90% on a very weak throw right there. But once you break that detent, it's always going to open if you're just doing the right thing there. So very nice action on deployment and on bringing the blade back in. So I really do like that. Moving back to the handles, we have a couple of nice slabs of titanium right here. It's totally done in a nice bead blast on the front. You've got these really nice speed holes. It definitely lightens the knife. At 6.22 ounces, you need every single bit of the ounces off of it, so it's nice that they did that. If they hadn't done this, I imagine you would have maybe close to an ounce more of weight. So the back of the thing is a titanium frame lock here. It's got a lock bar insert, and the action is super nice. There is no blade, there's no lock stick whatsoever. It's a nice early lockup, maybe 15 to 20%, something like that. And there is absolutely no problem in disengaging that lock. There's a nice amount of tension, and it works well. The pocket clip is actually pretty nice. There's a nice amount of spring to it, even though it's a milled pocket clip. There's enough of a ramp to get it in and out of your pocket. And they've done the nice thing of not putting the clip right on top of the lock bar cutout, so that's not getting hung up on your pants as you're putting it in and out of your pocket. So I definitely like that. Now I'm going to talk about my absolute least favorite part of this knife, and the thing that makes me not recommend this knife to anyone at any time ever, and that is this backspacer. While I understand having unique backspacers in this world, this one is really just, I'm not a fan of it, and that is for one major reason. Every single time you open this knife, that backspacer is going to dig into your hand, and it actually makes it somewhat painful to deploy this knife every single time. It's actually quite uncomfortable, and when I was playing with it, I found myself trying to hold it sort of to the side so that the backspacer was not jabbing me in the hand, and so that I could deploy it like this, and that's just unnecessary, and that's just a major fail, in my opinion, ergonomically. That just ruins this knife, and it just makes it, something that I'm not going to recommend to anybody. Now, the knife functionally is fine, the blade is okay, I actually like the design, I think it's a pretty knife, but this backspacer, as sharp as it is, and in the location that it is, makes this a complete fail. That in combination with this pivot collar that I don't really like, the screw that's not very good, and to be honest, these speed holes are a little bit annoying to me because my fingers don't really lock into them in any real position. When I'm actually holding the knife, none of my fingers are in those holes. That's a bit of a small OCD thing for me, but overall, just not a comfortable knife to hold on to and to operate. And to be honest, some of the design choices were a big fail for me. So I would say you should save your $180 or so, however much it costs at normal price, and maybe look at some of the other Kizers. What I do appreciate is the collaboration with a new knife maker. I do appreciate them trying a new design. I do like a nice Wharncliffe blade when it's done well, and this one was done pretty well. So I appreciate those aspects, but the way that this particular knife was executed is just not really satisfactory to me. So let me know what you guys think of this knife down in the comments below. There are a lot of guys out there who love this knife. Some guys are customizing this at secondary market or aftermarket, so look out for those mods. Maybe you could get a different backspacer and it would help everything. Go ahead and click like and subscribe to my channel here. Go follow me on Instagram at Dr. Frunkey. Leave some comments down below. And as always, guys, take care.